So here's the thing. Culture doesn't follow commerce. Commerce follows culture. And every brand trying to scale in today's market need to understand this. People don't buy products. They buy identity. They buy emotion. They buy meaning. And that's why we champion culture. Anuroop, your thoughts?
Absolutely. You think about anything that moves commerce, right? Anything that moves revenue. It's centered around, and you notice, it's centered around a cultural aspect. Merch follows concerts. Any sort of merchandise, when you think about toys, you think about fashion, it's following runways, it's following whoever the cartoon character is that's popular at that time. So you know this fact, but we're going to illustrate it for you so you can see some great examples as to when commerce has followed culture, right? And how you can actually implement it yourself.
That's a great point. I mean, even thinking about that, we're talking about this off camera a little bit ago, how culture moves faster, right, than commerce. So when you think about it, the cultural currency does not equal product currency, right? So, and why is that? Because culture moves faster than product cycles. And we have an interesting example to really illustrate this perfectly. And from our perspective, as it were, we're talking about how Zara did that.
Absolutely. So if you are somewhat aware of the fashion industry, you know that back in the day, what used to happen is that there'd be a runway show. There would be, a designer comes, shows their designs. This is essentially a expo. Really, you think about a fashion show, what it really is an expo for the designer. You're showing what my latest creations are, what my latest designs are. So while people are there for the entertainment, you actually also have the buyers, right, who are ready to line up and say, we're going to go ahead and make these orders and so forth. So what happens here is that a show happens. Now orders are made. Now production goes into play. So when you see something on the runway, that's the reason why if I'm doing a show this fall, it is considered the spring and summer collection of next year. Because you need to have that much time and that much space to where I'm showing you what I'm selling next year, right? You can order it so it's actually on the shelves for people to buy the following year and so forth. To disrupt this, Zara came into play, sped up their production process, and for them it was a matter of, well, if we're going to see a show on the runway, within 2 weeks we're going to go ahead and get mocks ready, and we're going to go ahead and put this into production. Now, why was this a groundbreaking? Because they've been around for a while, but why was this so groundbreaking, and why did it have this incredible compounding effect in the modern day? Is because it was amplified by social media, it was amplified by the internet. Now, if I'm a consumer and I'm watching clips and videos of a particular design that's on the runway, and now immediately I can go ahead and buy or pre-order it, as opposed to waiting till next year to do it.
Right.
I'm going to take that cultural moment, and while it's still fresh in my mind, I am going to want to become a part of it. Because to your point, Lionell, that sense of belonging is what helps build your customer base.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And I like that you tied in, belonging, because even with Nike, you see that, right?
Yeah.
They're not just selling shoes, right? They're selling belonging. Really, when you see that Nike swoosh, right, it's like, oh, okay, I'm a part of that community. It's this belonging, this feeling. Even when this example about the fashion piece, the way I was thinking about it, like even a billboard, right? So let's say if brand is the billboard, what's the backbone? Culture, right? Because it's driving those other aspects and so forth and so on. So that's why we love to talk about culture as it relates to commerce at that intersection of things, and how do brands embed themselves into these conversations and make sure that what they're selling is not just a product. They need to understand, okay, when you think about my product that I'm selling, let's say if it's it could be a beauty product or a clothing brand, whatever it is, what does it represent? What type of feelings do it evoke, right? So when we're thinking about, let's say, a particular company that may be in the business of preserving products, let's think like sneakers, right? The holy grails, so to speak, and all the different sneakerheads know, like, what's that feeling that I get when I open up that box right? And I got that pair of sneakers I've been waiting on. And you know, no matter what it is, it's some type of feeling that you get, right? And then on the flip side of that, we're thinking about identity, right? So what's the identity that I'm buying into when I make this purchase? And that's really driven by culture, even to the point to where, hey, look, if my shoes start yellowing, or if I get a scuff mark, what does that do? It's like it smears my identity, because I want my shoe perfect. I want it clean. I want it preserved. And so that's what I'm buying, so to speak, when it relates to that.
Mm-hmm. So let's even talk about the brands I have on right now, right? To that point, a sense of identity. So if you see these shoes right here, these are question mids from Reebok, right? I'm not a big Reebok fan. I am an Allen Iverson fan. And I'm a kid of the 90s who grew up on Allen Iverson and that whole era of NBA. Furthermore, these are special editions because these are in celebration of his game at the Rucker, where you actually have, literally, it says standing room only, because there were so many people there that there was standing room only. So what this does is that it captures a cultural moment and it tells a story. When I wear these shoes, I'm not necessarily saying I'm a Reebok person. When I'm wearing these shoes, I'm not saying that I'm necessarily even a street ball person, right? But what I'm saying is that when I wear these, I'm actually associated with that moment in culture that has some meaning to me. And I like to be identified, or I like to help evoke a memory of that particular moment.
I love that. That really ties it back in when we think about identity, right? So commerce is downstream of identity, right? So that's why the person made that buy or made that purchase, because of identity, right? So clicks follow culture. That's why people put an ad out. People are gonna, if it really, that first 3 seconds, if it really captures that attention, we call it the thumb stop ratio, right? If you get someone to stop, you know, while they're scrolling and click, right? It's something cultural about what they saw. I'll give you the example again of a preservation company, and as it relates to really preserving the integrity of your sneakers, as it were. And so there's an ad that they have, and it's a person, he has a pair of Jordans in his hands, he has these sneakers, and that's the first visual that you see is someone with all these nice sneakers behind them, sitting at a table, sneakers in his hand. So as soon as you see that, if you're a sneakerhead, you're like, hold on, wait, those are the 4s or what? Oh, those are the 11s, whatever they are, is going to get you to stop. And so now you want to hear, okay, what is he talking about here? And so that's how you get people to really, again, clicks follow culture. So when you think about visually what you want to put in front of your audience that you're trying to get in front of, you want to put something visually appealing, something that's going to get them to stop, right? And that's why we say even clicks, follow culture. And then commerce is downstream of identity, because if I identify with what that is, that emotion, that meaning, that cultural meaning making, as we would say, then obviously revenue is going to follow that as well. So these are just some things we like to discuss and really put at the center of conversations beyond just the product, beyond just the cycles of things, and really what's driving it, what's the core behind those things.
100%. And I'd actually even say, when you think about that aspect, right? So we're not saying that you don't have to sell as typically, like, you address pain points, you address a need. But it's what's that resonance, right? You are selling me something. So for example, you see these shoes. You come and talk about these shoes to me. Immediately I have a more warm interaction with you, because now what's happening is that I'm like, oh, okay, this person likes the same things that I do, right? And sales, of course, you're building rapport, right? If you study sales manuals, they always say building rapport. That's the most natural thing. I mean, they contextualized it, they made this academic thing. But honestly, it's just a matter of connection, right? Mm-hmm. So you create a connection with the audience. Now you still have to solve their needs. So don't get us wrong. That's why it's not just the culture podcast. It's the culture and commerce podcast. There's two sides to it.
Two sides of the coin.
But you can't do the other without the other, right? So in order to really make a successful business out of it, you have to focus on the commerce side. But if you are only focusing on that aspect and not really tapping into that culture aspect, you're not creating a sense of belonging and a sense of connection with your customer.
It's very true. Very true.
Yeah.
So, in other words, you don't need more reach, you need more resonance, is what we're getting at. And I think, too, like, what's the ritual? We talk a lot about internally at our agency, Inflex Digital, is the ritual mapping of things. So, where does your brand, where does your product show up in someone's routine or their ritual? Like, so when I get up in the morning, what are some of the first things that you do, right? Look in the mirror, get your face cleaned up, shower, whatever the case may be. You're getting yourself together. There's a routine that you follow. And so when it comes to a ritual mapping, if you're selling a certain product, where should your product show up in their ritual? You know, if it's a skincare product, for example, like, when are they going to apply that? When are they going to use that product? Where is it going to show up within their ritual? And then that's how you want to then market it. And also, you know, talk about the solution, right? What's the problem that it solves, as it were? And then that's going to, again, make it more, it's going to create that meaning, right? That make it more impactful. You're selling more than just a product, but it's this ritual, this experience that you're trying to cultivate and make a part of their daily routine. And that's the stickiness you hear a lot of people talk about. Like, how do you make something sticky? You make it a part of their routine. We think about the pandemic, for example. We think about tech. Zoom just went through the roof. Why? It became so sticky because people couldn't get out, right? They had the video conference and take meetings in this different format. And so it became very sticky, right? So let's fast forward. We're in 2025 now. Is that product still as sticky, right? Did they continue to evolve and make it a part of that routine, make it stick even far beyond the pandemic? Well, I'll give you my personal experience is that, well, you know, we're always looking to be efficient, right? So, you know, Google Meets, I didn't like Google Meets because it just seemed very clunky and just, you know, not as user-friendly in my opinion. And so that's why I use Zoom. But as of late, Google Meets got really good, and I like the videos, and plus I'm already using Gmail and like all this other product. I'm already paying for it. And so it just made sense, and it was easier as I was reviewing, like, well, why am I paying for Zoom? What else am I getting out of Zoom that's going to make me keep it a part of my routine when I can just use Google Meet? It's starting to, you know, evolve and become more advanced. And so I canceled my Zoom, right? and now I'm using Google Meets, and I don't need Calendly neither, right? So Calendly I was using because I'm like, oh man, this is excellent. This is perfect. Well, wait, I can schedule calls via Google. And so it just became easier.
So what Lionell just mentioned, that's an example of distribution advantage, right?
Mm-hmm.
Two things happened here. One, Zoom wasn't able to innovate and now plug itself into his regular schedule anymore, right? In an environment where we're only restricted to remote meetings and we're looking at the one best product that's there. At that point, it's a critical product to use, and you want to use the best product that's available, right? But if you're not innovating or you're not actually plugging into my new routine, right? So you need to be more plugged into, okay, now how am I doing meetings after the pandemic? Am I doing virtual? Am I doing in person? I'm having more cross, online, offline type of meetings. I'm traveling, whatever the case may be. If you're not really building around that, now you get out competed by somebody who has a distribution advantage, because guess what? I am already paying for Google Business, right? I'm already paying for a license there. They just come in and add that as a feature, right? So are you actually a product or are you a feature, right? Products, as we always say, they end up becoming features on more suite of products that are there. In order to go ahead and continue with their dominance, they needed to innovate. They needed to capture the moment that's there. Another thing I want to point out is when we talk about routine and we talk about ritual, that is really what persona is, right? It's not male 35 living in DC. It's not like, oh, here's Johnny who does this and so forth. It's the fact that, okay, the person I'm targeting, right? what are they generally doing? Because guess what? Between even us sitting here, we may have very different likes and dislikes and so forth, but there's definitely a lot of commonality in terms of how we may wake up, how we may pursue, get our morning coffee, how we like certain brands and so forth. That's what you build around persona. And then depending on what pain point you solve for me, you are going to have him as a target market, you're going to have me as a target market, right? But then there's going to be certain things that are common in our routine. So that's what gives you your market size. Are you going to be able to appeal to us in the same context? Or do you have to talk to me differently and talk to Lionell differently? Because, again, identity.
That's a great point.
There is certain differences. So where do you plug in? If you're a coffee, right? You talk to us as entrepreneurs as to, okay, the energy, no crashes, all those kind of things. And now we're like, okay, great. You're a great product for us. If you plug into different aspects of our routine or daily rituals, right? Now at that point, you have to speak to us differently. So that's what you have to do when you think about customer discovery and you talk about customer definition. That's the level of granularity you need to get into.
I think that's a perfect segue to, something I was thinking about as we, observe the different shifts in culture and in markets and so forth. And that is selling to the masses is outdated, right? It's now more so about the super niche or that niche depth versus just this broad, audience appeal. Now, you can use those broad strategies to really find and pinpoint who that niche market is based on the data that you're getting as you go broad, and then that's going to help you to better refine, to go deeper, and really find who that person is that you want to get in front of. We always say, you mentioned, demographic age is not a proxy for why they actually took action. It tells you something about them, their age, yes, where they live, where they're located, but what is it about them specifically? Like, what do they believe, as it were? And so some of the questions we like to ask brand owners is, hey, if your product was a car, what kind of car would it be? And then that's going to really give you perspective on how people feel or what they think about your product or your brand. Another one, depending on, it's like, what moment, if your product was a moment in time, what kind of moment would that be? Is it a rookie debut? Is it a particular song? If it's a beauty product, what kind of fragrance, what kind of scent would it be? Because that's going to get people thinking about the type of feeling that they have, the emotion that it's evoking. And then that's what you want to tap into when you think about how you want to market to certain audiences to see what is it about them that they believe or feel or think, as it were.
100%. And I'd even go as far as to say this. Essentially what's happening is that if you're a fragrance, there is an audience that you have that resonates with a fragrance, right? So this particular fragrance, there's a fandom that's there. Is your product that particular, like if you look at the whole fragrance market that's there, is your product the equivalent of that? So I'm just going to throw a name out. So you guys are going to like this. You're going to like this. Dior Sauvage, right? So if you're the Dior Sauvage of your market, who is buying Dior Sauvage in the fragrance market? And then who is buying it off of your target market and who is buying it, right? These are all characteristics you tie into. And then again, it comes back to identity. It comes back to beliefs, right? I think Dr. Marcus Collins, right?
Oh, yeah.
He has a great term called congregation for this, right? So who are those congregations like?
Where do they congregate? Like, he always say, I love Dr. Marcus Collins. I met him in Atlanta. This was about a year ago. And I bought his book. He had a book called For the Culture. And that really got me going down this whole, that tunnel, right? Like, wow, like, okay, this is interesting, the way he framed things, the way he talks about things around, like you said, congregation. It's like, so how do we preach the gospel, so to speak? And if I'm trying to sell to a certain audience, where do they congregate, right? What do they believe? Where do they show up? Where do they spend their time? And then I need to go and preach the gospel to them. So whatever that product is, I need to go and talk about the feelings that is going to conjure up in them. I need to preach that, from the mountaintop, as it were, preach the gospel. So I really like the way he frames it and the way he thinks about it. So that's some of the things that we do too at Inflect is how do we embed that there? Well, we have Dr. Marcus Collins as our professor in residence, as it were. So we appreciate you, Dr. Collins.
The one thing I'm going to definitely ask you to do is, whether it's your brand, whether it's even yourself, I would say, ask yourself, what kind of car are you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, what you want to do is note that down. Don't tell anybody. Go to all your friends and ask them what kind of car you are, right? See what they say. If you want to know what people think about you, that is going to be a great way to figure that out, because then you go ahead and tie that in. And this is some basic brand research that's like, hey, so what exactly does an Acura represent, right? Or what exactly does a Toyota Supra represent? And you'll get your answers.
Absolutely. So we want to thank you all for joining us. I guess the last thing we'll leave you with is like our good friends over at Cathedral is good storytellers, but culture without a story, right, it is going to fall flat. And so context matters. And so you want to think about what's the story behind what you're trying to sell, what you're presenting, because that's going to give it the depth and the resonance that it needs. And so always remember that culture without a story, it's not going to land. Context matters. So keep that in mind. Hey, and sign up for our newsletter, Growth Code. We're going to be talking a lot about these different things. You can visit our website, inflectdigital.com. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, etc. So thank you so much for joining us. Anuroop, any closing thoughts?
I would say definitely sign up for Growth Code, because the tactical way to do these things, we're going to go ahead and talk about, right? If you feel like, hey, I got my commerce area down, I really need to figure out culture, or maybe the opposite. You feel like you have your culture down and you really need to figure out the commerce side, go to inflectdigital.com. There's a consultation page. You can go there. Let's have a conversation. Let's talk about how we can go ahead and help you with this, right? And, if you really need some proof, like I said, proof is in the pudding, right? There's a whole stack of case studies for you right there. So check those out.
And if you like it better said this way, then the proof is in the eating of the pudding. And commerce without story, it's just inventory. Thank you.